Good afternoon and welcome. You're listening live to Heart, the program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self at KMET 1490 AM ABC Radio Live. This is Dr. Mitra Rashidian along with Dr. Robert Jaffe, offering you a program on human sexuality and sexual healthcare at this hour. And we both are licensed psychotherapists in private practice. I'm specializing in human sexuality and sexual healthcare, and Dr. Jaffe is specializing in hypnotherapy, and he's a certified hypnotherapist. Welcome.
Thank you, and welcome to everybody. We're here to help you to feel loved and loving in your life.
I like that.
Yeah, the more that we feel loved and loving, the happier we are. The happier we are, the higher vibration we put out to the universe and to other people. We are all energy, and we vibrate at a certain frequency. And those of us who vibrate at a happier, higher frequency attract happier and higher things into their life, people, places, and things. Those of us who struggle to get there struggle with attracting things that they don't necessarily want or need in their life. So how do we do that? How do we get to that higher vibration? How do we become more loved and loving? And that's what our program is all about. So welcome.
Yes. And so we would like to hear from you. Please call us, join us. Without you, this program is kind of, it's kind of empty, right? It just sounds that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds like it's just myself, Robert, and Jesse, our program director.
Exactly.
And Jesse is silent because that's what he has to do so that we can talk. But he's running the show, and we appreciate him a lot. And so our phone number here for you to contact us is 951-922-3532. And if you are unable to contact us live, we understand, because sometimes you may not feel comfortable to share private information or ask private questions. Therefore, there are other ways of contacting us. Facebook Live, KMET Facebook, and also our private number that are appearing, on the screen as you're watching this program. So 951-922-3532 is our live phone number. Also, as you may have known by now, this is the last program that we have at 3 p.m. At this week. And then starting next week, September the 9th, we are going to 4 o'clock. Both myself and Dr. Robert Jaffe, we are offering a program of the same context, similar context, more variety. And occasionally we may have a guest, attending to our show. And which we will be announcing who that person will be and what is the purpose of their presentation, so that you have beforehand information for yourself. It's just going to be more variety, and we hope that you join us and support us with our new system of offering you this program.
Absolutely. So welcome, and today we're going to be talking about...
Today I thought, I see that among couples that when they come to our, to our counseling, services, they ask questions. And when they ask questions, even though a current presenting issue brings them to see us, right? But as you and I know, there are so many underlying issues that clients have never been aware of.
Right.
And how those unknown issues actually have been running the show for them.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's the title of the book that we started writing and we're continuing to work on. The subconscious runs the show. Right?
Exactly.
And most people, they sort of know what the subconscious is. They don't actually understand it. And they certainly don't recognize how much impact it has on them.
Exactly. Yes. And then, people may ask, well, they have heard about conscious, subconscious, unconscious, I mean, conscious, yeah, conscious, unconscious, subconscious. However, how do they separate them from each other?
Mm-hmm.
And many believe that what they think and what they can tangibly think, what they can tangibly experience is actually
All of.
all of what's going on with them,
Right.
right? And then when we talk to our patients, we see that when we ask them certain questions, they kind of pause and they say, "Oh yeah, I never thought of it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, I never paid attention to it."
Right.
Or, yeah, I have some vague memories
Mm-hmm.
of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then again, unless we target the subconscious, and of course the unconscious is very difficult to get in touch with, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
rely on the subconscious.
Right.
It's gonna help us to understand, our patients, perceptions, associated beliefs, associated thoughts and feelings and attitude, and ultimately the associated behavior,
Mm-hmm.
which is their communication and also what they do.
Right.
Right. So, and then one of the main issues that we see pretty much is ubiquitous among all the presenting problem.
Mm-hmm.
I should say that it's like a huge umbrella that is like the pink elephant in the room, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Among majority of the couples that we see is the issue of attachment,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And then what kind of attachment style the client, between the husband and a wife, the partners, the boyfriend, girlfriend, the whomever, the couple that have the relationship with, right?
Mm-hmm.
They bring in their own particular style of attachment into their relationship,
Right.
right?
And attachment basically means how we learn to connect with other people.
Right.
That's the simple version of attachment.
Yes.
We connect with other people in several different ways. The healthy way of connecting with other people has to do with having a good sense of self and a good sense of where I end and the other person begins.
Right.
So, what does that mean? That means that um, that if I'm having a feeling, that I'm aware of that feeling, that I take responsibility for that being my feeling, and that I don't project that feeling onto you. So if I'm feeling nervous or anxious, I don't say to you, you know, why are you making that face? Why are you saying that the way you're saying it? I don't project my anxiety onto you. I just say I'm feeling anxious, and then I look for why I'm feeling anxious. And if it has to do with you, I'm saying I'm feeling anxious because you're running all over the place and you feel, and you don't seem centered to me. And the reason that makes me anxious is because that's what my mother did, or that's how I learned. That's what I learned as a kid, or I had an ex-wife who did that, and it really always bothered me, and we used to fight over that. There's always something about us when it has to do with the other person's behavior that we need to look at to understand why we're having our reaction.
Exactly. And then some of these reactions are so, connected to our unconscious, and the message, the meaning, the belief that we have attached to it about ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I'm a lovable person, or I'm not a good enough person, or I'm a safe person, or the world is safe, or I can trust people, or I cannot trust people.
Right.
Right.
Right. If she won't have sex with me, that means she's a cold fish.
Yeah.
If she won't have sex with me, that means that I'm not attractive. If she won't have sex with me, that means that she's having an affair.
Right.
These are common things that people go to where they don't know, but they imagine those things, and based on those imaginings, that informs their feelings and their behavior, and often creates big problems.
Exactly, exactly. So attachment theory initially was introduced by John Bowlby, a notable psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then actually with his theory of attachment, he made a revolution in psychology,
Mm-hmm.
right? Many of the issues that therapists and psychologists, the psychiatrists couldn't understand why they were occurring with the Bowlby's, attachment theory kind of became more clear, more apparent, and much easier to understand and to relate to,
Right.
and therefore to treat, right? I remember the very first attachment seminar that I myself attended was back in probably 1999, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm.
Seems like so long ago, right?
It does. It does. Yeah.
There was this, I think, a three-day seminar at UCLA,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the notable psychiatrists that really has done significant research on attachment, Professor, gosh, I forgot his name. How?
Yeah, it'll come to you.
Yeah, it will come back to me, right? So he presented, so many areas of attachment, and it was since then that I actually fell in love with this theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to, learn more and more about it. One of the most beautiful part of that seminar, which I don't think I can ever forget that. It was showing how an infant is communicating with his or her parent.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did, they actually had a real scenario of an infant connecting to, I don't know, was it his or her mother? So the child infant was connecting to parents by significant form of movement, facial movement,
Mm-hmm.
finger touch, and little bit of a sound system that it was so magnified, right? And
facial expression.
And facial expression, yes. So the mom, as the mom was responding to the child was actually responding back to the mom.
Yes.
So it was so incredible because unless we lower the speed of movement at that magnitude, it was like, I don't know how slow that process was, but there was no other way that anybody can just see with the naked eye, can just see that kind of a movement. So it has to slow down significantly. Daniel Siegel, that's Dr. Daniel Siegel. I just remember that because he was the one who's introducing that pattern.
Right.
Right. And so we just got a notice about our commercial break. When we come back,
before we stop, I just want to say quickly that what you just did was an example of the subconscious, because you couldn't remember his name.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it popped into your mind. And where did it come from? It came from the subconscious.
Subconscious, exactly.
So we'll
Thank
see you.
For saying that.
We'll see you in a few moments, and please stay with us.
Thank you. Welcome back to the part at KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio Live. This is Dr. Mitra and Dr. Robert offering you a program on human sexuality and sexual health care and relationship, of course. For those of you who are joining us, if you find anything interesting here, please introduce it to those that you believe they can benefit from this program. And we would like to hear from you to know about your story. Our phone number here live is 951-922-3532. Also, you can, contact us privately if you wish to do that. And just a reminder, starting next week, September the 9th, we no longer are holding the 3 o'clock program. So we are happy to, meet you back at 4 p.m., 4 to 5, along with both of us, Dr. Robert Jaffe and myself, offering you the same program, but in a more variety and more actually, engaged. We would hope to do that.
Yes.
Right? So welcome back, Dr. Jaffe.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't go anywhere, but thank you.
No, but we had a commercial break.
Okay.
So before the commercial, we were talking about, how attachment actually forms. And I was giving you an example at the seminar when I went back in 1999. And Dr. Daniel Siegel, along with his colleagues, they were giving us this amazing presentation about the new findings on attachment theory. And then one of the significant part of that was watching this amazing video where they kind of slowed down the whole movement of the infant to show how the infant actually was understanding, the mom movements, was recognizing the sound of the mom, was able to hear and therefore respond back in a way that infant does. So when we see an infant moving hands or kind of, it's not that they don't understand or it's not that they are disconnected. As a matter of fact, they are fully engaged, they are fully present, they are fully aware, they're fully sensing, they're fully grasping, it's like downloading everything that the mom does into their brain.
Both the good news and the bad news.
The good news and the bad news, exactly.
Rolled up into a big ball of news.
Exactly. So, and this is the beginning, perhaps, actually, not today. We know that it goes back to the the 7th month of pregnancy. That's when the child actually starts to form their attachment style, right?
Okay.
So starting with that, the child starts to form and shape their attachment style with their caregiver, whether that's mom, dad, anybody else. So that's how it starts. The way it begins is how the caregiver or the mom is responding back to the child. Whether the child feels safe, whether the child feels loved, whether the child feels ignored, whether the child feels that he or she is being rushed in feeding time, whether the child feels that, they have been held lovingly,
yes,
or they have been just held up, whether they feel they have been attended to, or they are just being given a bottle to just, keep them quiet.
Right.
Right. And everything that basically the caregiver feels at the moment, whether they're annoyed, whether they're tired, whether they're pissed off, whether they can't wait to go to sleep, whether, whatever the caregiver feels, the child feels about himself or herself.
Because there is no understanding of a separation between the child and the parent. So when you say that the child is downloading the parent's nervous system, the child is unaware that it's the parent's nervous system. The child feels it as though it's their nervous system. And those imprints, if you will, become part of the child's experience of themselves.
Exactly. And then people have asked me this question, but a child, has, their eyes closed all the time. So yes, so they're not just downloading the imprints by looking at the mom, right? Actually, that body-to-body contact is the first place of downloading.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, there was this article that said, my gut, my first brain. Right? So that's true, right? That a body-to-body contact or a skin-to-skin contact, and the way that contact takes place is the very first initial, form of downloading of how am I being welcome to this world, right?
Yeah.
And the child stays with that.
Yeah.
If the child feels avoided, that's their style of attachment. Avoidance is the attachment.
Avoidance style of attachment.
If the child feels anxiety coming from the environment or the caregiver, that's the style of attachment they form. They have that anxious, style of attachment.
Right.
If the child feels secured by the attachment, it's with that I mean loved, supported, attended to, valued, right? So the child feels, secure in the world.
Right.
Right. And so that's the initial part.
Right.
And whatever we establish at that time of our life, and we continue to actually, make that system grow around us. Because if I'm receiving an anxious style of attachment, right, of course my mom wouldn't know that this is what she's doing, right, and she continues with that behavior, with that system. I'm reestablishing as an infant more and more and more of a style of anxious attachment about myself.
Right. And I want to say that this is not an all or nothing.
No,
or
it's
black,
not an all or nothing.
Or black and white thing. So the child may feel loved at times and may feel anxious at times from the parent, and so the child downloads or takes all of that in, and then creates a way for them to navigate and survive in that environment. And that's a lot of how they form their final stage of attachment as they start growing.
Exactly. And with that, comes, of course, that definitely reflects on interpersonal skills of the individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So that combination, also comes into the relationship.
Right.
Right. So how I feel about myself as a living being, and how I feel loved, whether I feel like, I'm somebody that I need to kind of stay in an avoid kind of a mental state,
Mm-hmm.
whether I'm anxious, whether I feel, however I feel, right? I'm going to bring that into my relationship. And the more intimate that relationship becomes, the more I will show my style of attachment.
Correct.
Isn't that interesting?
Say it again and maybe give an example.
Okay, so the more of whatever style of attachment somebody forms, right, that shows actually more in their sexual relationship.
Well, the sexual relationship is the closest relationship in the person's life.
Right.
And the closest relationship that they had growing up is with the mother and the father, but mostly the mother, in that they've been inside the mother. You said, 7 months, at least for a couple of months, they've been forming this attachment style with the mother. And then, of course, when they're born, the mother is usually the one who's nurturing them more than the father.
Right.
That's not to say that the father doesn't have an impact, and the father does have an impact, but unfortunately or fortunately, depending upon how relaxed and how loving your mother was, will determine to a large extent how safe you feel in intimate relationships and how you relate to your partner, and also how you select your partner.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Usually, there are people that they are able to attract people who share similar, style of attachment.
Mm-hmm.
There are times that doesn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? But usually we attract somebody that, shares similarity with us.
Right. So what do you think of the statement that opposites attract?
Opposite attracts too. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, nothing is just black and white.
Yeah.
Right?
I think in some ways opposite attracts, but I think in more subconscious ways similarity
attracts. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and the similarity is attractive because it feels familiar.
Correct.
It doesn't mean that it is good
or wanted,
but it is familiar. And across the years, as we grow up, we learn how to deal and how to survive in a familiar but even yet uncomfortable, mindset or situation.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So once we have that belief that I can survive, and I mean the key word here is survive, not to have a happy life, not to have a joyful time. The key is, because when we go into the anything but a secure attachment style,
Mm-hmm.
the aim becomes surviving.
Right. Right.
What do I do to survive?
And the reason for that is because the baby, the infant, or as you're saying, even the embryo, right, um, is uh, it is totally dependent
Right.
upon the caregiving of the parent, the mother, for their survival. And as a result, it feels, like you said, familiar as they get older. And survival sort of trumps everything else.
Exactly.
Right.
So here comes the statement that you made, that you said similarities attract subconsciously, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's this example. Like, for example, a child that has witnessed abuse among, parents, whether they see them fighting, arguing, even physically, attacking each other, more or less may end up, in a relationship that serves the same concept.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Correct.
So she or he may end up in an abusive relationship.
May end up in an abusive at worst, right?
Yeah.
So certainly it can be physically abusive, yeah. which is very, very survival kind of based stuff. It can be emotionally abusive, which also threatens us in terms of our physical survival. And if it isn't abusive, it can still be unloving.
Yes.
Right. So
right.
And so unloving doesn't satisfy that part of us, as I said at the beginning of the show, that wants to feel loved and loving.
Right.
But if it's a matter of survival, we will put up with it.
Exactly. So, and then as we grow up, with any category of unsecure attachment,
Mm-hmm.
right? We develop, certain skills subconsciously and even unconsciously about how to make it in an unhappy relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel that's it. We feel that nothing will change. Everybody's the same. This is life, and I'm here. I'm married or I have a relationship, and I'm just gonna make the best out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of surrender ourselves
right.
to unhappiness,
mm-hmm.
kind of surrender ourselves to something that doesn't bring us joy,
because it feels like we have to in order to survive. But yeah. As adults, we at a conscious level, we know in most cases we know that we don't have to do this in order to survive. But at a subconscious level, it feels like that.
Exactly.
So, and the subconscious does run the show. Therefore, we succumb to it without realizing that the reason we're doing it is because there's this underlying fear of survival. And our conscious brain tries to give reasons, logical reasons. He's a good dad, and I don't want to break up the family. A logical reason. But the bottom line is, I can't survive without him.
Without him, yes. So as we can see, we tend to repeat the same pattern that we became familiar with
mm-hmm.
during our infancy in adulthood. And of course, we add, more reality-based or more belief system or more of everything that's happening in our life to it.
Right.
And so it's sort of we are reestablishing
mm-hmm.
what we initially learned about ourselves and the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
We continue to reestablish that. And, it's not surprising that we choose relationship as friends, as colleagues, as life partner. We end up with similarities of unhappiness.
Right.
And therefore we believe, well, that's the world.
Yeah. Well, now we're getting into the idea of generalizing.
Right.
Right. And so what we do is, if we've had an experience in childhood, we're talking today about bonding, right? And we're talking about how we feel in relationship to our parents, specifically our moms. If we believe that we have to, that's the way we have to be in order to survive, It's an underlying subconscious belief. We're not consciously aware of it. Um, if we don't act in the way that we did with our mothers, we feel that we are in danger of not surviving. But because it's subconscious, we don't know that, and we continue to act in ways that are not satisfying, but at least we get through the day.
Exactly. So we just got a notice of our commercial break, and we will come back in a few minutes, and please join us again then. And don't forget to call us and share your attachment style and experiences. 951-922-3532. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
For now.
For now.
Welcome back to the commercial break. Dr. and Dr. Robert here at Heart to Heart program. We are at the last segment of our last show for 3 o'clock.
Yes.
And it's kind of feels bittersweet, kind of it, It's bitter because, we're used to having 2 hours of show. And then it's sweet because I know our next program is going to be even better, even though it is 1 hour.
We are definitely going to make it better.
Exactly. So we're glad that you have been with us. We want to thank you that you have been with us. And then we are counting on you to join us, right, at 4 p.m. next week. And for as long as we're here.
As long as we're here.
So we have been talking about attachment issues. And then so when it comes to relationship, intimate relationship, sexual relationship, what do we do with all these, attachments?
Right.
Patterns.
And one of the things that, that I want to say about psychotherapy is a lot of people have the idea that psychotherapy is about advice giving.
Right.
And although therapists do at times give advice,
suggestions.
Advice, advice. Yeah. Here's what I advise. What I say to my clients is, I'm advising you, but I'm not attached to you taking my advice. So if and you can say suggestions or advice, and I say, because my advice it may or may not fit for you, and if it fits for you, great, and if it doesn't fit for you, then we try something else. So, but really good deep psychotherapy is less about advice giving and more about helping people understand their patterns of behavior.
Awareness.
And the awareness that comes from understanding their patterns, why they have those patterns, what those patterns are giving them and what those patterns are not giving them, gives them the tool to move from the subconscious to the conscious, so that we can make different decisions, which will obviously create different results in our life.
Exactly.
So awareness of what's going on inside of us. The 2 words that I like the best are know thyself, right? And people go, well, I know myself, and I say, yeah, to an extent we do. But again, there's a lot of subconscious things and patterns that we don't know, and that as we do know, we become much more empowered to make the changes in our life that bring us the things that really give us joy and love.
Exactly. That was beautifully said.
Thank you.
Thank you. So when we get a couple that we immediately know that their attachment issue attached to their behavior and the presenting problem and all of that, the way we help them is first for the couple to learn, about their attachment style.
Correct.
And why is that important? Because then we know how the relationship is shaping, how the relationship is engaged, how the relationship has connection and disconnections. What are the pattern of communications? What are the pattern of relating to each other? What are the pattern of arguments? So how the attachment style of each partner is determines the type of communication that they have.
Right. the way that they communicate with each other about the things that are most important to them.
Right, right. And so that's the first step for them to know that about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I think is equally important is that uh, for each partner to get to know the attachment style of their partner.
Right, but first recognizing their own.
Their own, yes.
Yeah.
So once we recognize our own, and once we recognize and learn about our partner's attachment style, then we can see the similarities, we can see the differences, we can see why we behave the way we behave and we believe the way we believe. And then once we have that all mapped out on the table, like a naked look, we can look at it, then we can see where the issues are stemming from.
Right. And as you're saying that, I'm happening to think about the book, The Five Love Languages. In the book, the author, I think it was Gary Chapman, he talks about how people give and receive love in different ways, and that some people, for example, like physical gifts, and that makes them feel loved. Other people like physical touch. Doesn't mean we can't like all of it, but generally we have our preferred styles.
Yeah.
And so those love languages are actually the precursor to attachment styles, because the love language is what you are looking for in your partner, that makes you feel closer to your partner. And what we're talking about today is attachment styles. When we're aware of those attachment styles and we're aware that I attach in this way and you attach in this way, then we're much more able to be understanding of our partner and to give our partner what they need, not necessarily what we need.
Exactly. And I know of a very good person that in my life, I know that about, his attachment, his, love language.
Yeah, yeah.
Affirmation.
Words of affirmation. Yeah.
Yes. Can you give me an example of words of affirmation?
You look so attractive today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I especially like the way you're wearing your hair.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, and and I don't know, are you wearing a different perfume because it just draws me in?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right.
So
okay.
those are examples.
Okay, those are good. Those are very good examples.
Uh-huh.
Which I wish more people would say those to each other.
Yes.
Instead of why this, why that, where have you been? Why you didn't return my call? Right?
Yes.
And they both are saying, something. They both are actually giving the same message. But in a different tone, in a different way of communicating.
Right.
Right. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So one way of knowing about, our own attachment style is to actually journaling about ourselves, about our thoughts, about our feelings.
Yeah.
About how we relate or not relate to a given situation or to a person in our life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So when we do that, then we can understand, the source of our beliefs, the source of our perception about what's going on. And this is how another way that we can, identify what kind of attachment we have.
Right.
And then do we want to keep it? Do we want to change it? And if you want to keep it, okay. If you don't want to change, if you want to change it, how do we want it to be?
Right.
Because as adults, that's the beauty of it, right? When we were children, okay, we felt powerless. We were dependent on our parents. But now that we are adults, who has the power over us? Except for us letting some people have power over us. But the reality is we are in power of our life. We are in control of our life.
So well, that's actually the goal. It's the goal, I think, in psychotherapy, is to help people recognize that truth.
Yes.
That we are in control of we're in control of of how we take in information and what we do with that information. However, because so much of it is subconscious, we don't feel as like we have control, and we feel like we are in reaction to things around us rather than we have the ability to take in the information in different ways that can frame it in a way that's much more useful and
Exactly.
makes us feel more in power
Right.
in our lives.
Right. And you know what you just brought up is very significant in relationship, because many couples that I have seen, you know, one of their presenting problem is that one attempts to possess the other one.
Mm-hmm.
She is my wife, he is my husband.
Right.
Yes, well, I mean, that's accurate, right? But we are not the owner of that person.
Right.
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 In other words, if the husband or the wife, you know, wants to make a phone call or wants to buy something or wants to make a move or wants to change something, they have it's so it seems like they have to ask permission from the other one and approval from the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or, you know, she's my wife, I want to have sex with her anytime I want to.
Well, good luck.
Good luck.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
But if that doesn't happen, right, then there is something wrong with the relationship. They say, oh no, I mean, I'm the husband, where am I supposed to go to have sex?
Well, that's definitely you know. But even for getting sex, you know, what you're bringing up also is expectations.
Expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
And our expectations are informed a lot by our attachment styles.
Right.
Right. So if we are expecting the person with us to love to touch and cuddle and be touched because that's what we like, and this person prefers words of affirmation, and we're not giving them that, and they're not giving us the touch, then we feel like there's something wrong with them, rather than there's a misunderstanding of what is really going on with both of us.
Yes, exactly. So once we journal about, you know, what we feel, what we want, and why is that, you know, we are able to see our attachment style.
If we recognize that when we're journaling, the way that I suggest to people that they journal is either just to sit down and write, or to ask themselves a question, you know. And the question can be, why is it that we fight so much? Okay. And then you just write down why is it that we fight so much, and then you just start journaling, and you journal for 5 minutes. In the 5 minutes you're journaling, your subconscious is working on the answer to that, and some of it will come out in the journaling.
Exactly. You know, I have a client that they were talking about being abandoned,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I asked them a question. I said, exactly, you know, what does abandonment mean to them?
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him to either reflect about it or to write about it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them wrote me a 3-page single space, you know, note.
Uh-huh.
What abandonment felt like to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear every single sentence had a different form of how this person feels that she has been abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
It was so powerful that
Mm-hmm.
I went through like maybe less than half of the first page, and I had to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know what she said to me? She said, nobody has ever asked me that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So the questions that we ask of ourselves and the questions that we ask of our partners are vital in terms of resolving the issues that we have. We can either impose our own beliefs on our partner, and they can impose their beliefs on us, which keeps us separate and blaming, or we can ask the questions such as, why? Why do you feel that way? And when they answer, instead of trying to correct them, just trying to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. We want to just understand and become aware before we go any further.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And then, you know, once we journaling, we can identify what are the triggering factors.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that kind of, you know, sort of gets us out of our good mood.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And also, so what are the triggers that actually keeps us in our good mood?
Right. And a trigger is something that on its own is not very destructive. But when it hits an unresolved conflict or feeling in our subconscious mind, takes us back in time subconsciously to the pain that we experienced at that time. And then because it's subconscious, we're not aware that it's bringing up something from the past, and therefore we act as though it's actually happening in the now moment.
Exactly.
And then when we get triggered, or when we trigger somebody else, they're not operating from a present moment perspective. They're operating from a past moment perspective, which they're believing is in the present moment.
Exactly. And then, so when we hear, triggers, it also reminded me of when people say, oh, she said that and she made me so angry, or he did that and I felt so frightened.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So they always look at the other person as the person who created the scenario, where in fact, it's us that when we see something, it triggers our own unconscious mind.
Yeah.
And how we manage to feel safe in similar situation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And what everybody else is doing is just a reflection of them. It has nothing to do with us, and they're not triggering us. Right?
Right.
And I think this is one of the hardest part of therapy, to help clients to see that.
Right, because it means that I'm responsible for everything that goes on inside of me. That means that I'm responsible for how I take things in, and how I process it, and then how I give it back.
Exactly.
And that's a high level of responsibility. So people have a hard time with that. They want to give it to somebody else because that's easier.
It's easier. And with that, we are done with our 3 to 4 o'clock show. We thank you for being a part of this program. Thank you for your support. We're not done. We're starting our next show at 4 o'clock with Dr. Robert Jaffe and myself. And starting next week, we look forward for you to join us at 4 o'clock, every 4 o'clock from next week on. So until 4 o'clock today, all you need in life is love.
All you need is love.
Thank you for being a part of our show.
We appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.